Chapter 57 of SHRIMADBHAGAWATAM, Priyavrata's Rule. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Unattached as he was to the things of this world, Priyavrata lived among men, and he was not one with them. He did his duty as king. He married Barhishmati, the daughter of Vishwakarma. 10 sons and a daughter were born to them. Agnitra was the eldest of them. 3 of the younger sons became sannyasins early in their lives, even as their father had done in his early days. Because of his prowess and because of his righteousness, there were no enemies to the kingdom ruled by Priyavrata. His rule was such that people were all happy. He was endowed with divine prowess. Once he thought to himself, "The sun illumines only half the world, and the other half is in darkness. I must find out the path of the sun." He equipped himself with a chariot as fast and glorious as that of the sun, and he travelled with the sun round the earth 7 times. The motes, formed by the quick progress of his chariot, became the 7 great seas, and the earth was divided also into 7 islands. These were named Jambu, Plaksha, Shalmali, Kusha, Krauncha, Shaka, and Pushkar. The seas were named Lavana, Ikshu, Sura, Sarpi, Dhadhi, Kshira, and Madhu. Agnitra and the other 6 sons were made to rule these 7 islands. The daughter by name Ojaswati was given in marriage to Shukra, and their daughter was Devayani. When he felt that he had performed the duties assigned to him by his elders, Priyavrata decided to renounce the kingdom. Like the life sheds the body which had been in its home for long, he abandoned his kingdom, his wife and companions, and went off to the forest to continue the penance which had been interrupted by his grandfather, Brahma. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna Paramastu. Chapter 58 of SHRIMADBHAGAWATAM, the birth of Rishabha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Priyavrata's son was Agnitra, and his eldest son was Nabhi. Nabhi had no children, and he therefore performed a sacrifice where he worshipped the Lord in the form of Yagna Purusha. Pleased with his devotion, Narayana appeared before him. The Ritviks and the Yajamana of the sacrifice praised the Lord with suitable words. They said, "You are perfect and you are complete in every way. We have not the power nor the command over words with which you should be praised. We can only fall at your feet and show our devotion. In a world full of sinful things which beset the path of man, who is there who can gauge your greatness? With our thoughts turned towards earthly things and with earthly desires filling our minds, how can we aspire to know you and describe you? In your infinite love and compassion for us, you are pleased with the inadequate offerings made by us. We praise you with words which are not enunciated clearly even. We worship you with water and tulasi leaves and tender blades of grass. And yet, you are pleased with our worship. All that you want is bhakti. Without bhakti, the most elaborately performed yaga will not please you. It seems as though you have understood the deep bhakti we have for you. Or else, how could you, the Lord of Lords, bless us with your presence? Worship, my Lord, should be selfless, and yet this yaga has been performed with an object in view. The king Nabhi wants a son, and it is for this purpose that the yajna has been performed by us. We feel so small and so ashamed to ask a favor of you when we have been granted the greatest reward for our yajna, your presence. Please forgive us for asking you this favor." Narayana looked kindly on his worshippers, who stood with tears flowing from their eyes, and said, "Do not humiliate yourselves. Nabhi wants a son like me, and so he has asked you to perform this yajna. There is no one like me, and so I will myself be born as the son of Nabi. To me, nothing is more precious than the word of a Brahmin, and when Brahmins, great Brahmins like you, have performed this yajna, I will honor you by granting your wish. I will be born as the son of Nabi. In course of time, a son was born to Nabi, and the king, knowing that it was the Lord who had taken the form of a child to bless him, felt there was no one to equal him in good fortune. The child was named Rishabha, and the fame of the child spread far and wide. When his son reached manhood, Nabi crowned him as king and went to Badari, where he worshipped Nara and Narayana till he reached the feet of the Lord. Rishabha, in course of time, married Jayanti, the daughter of Indra, and became the father of 100 sons. The eldest of them was Bharata. The country which he ruled later became known as Bharatavarsha. The purpose of Rishabha Avatara was to show the world of men that a man can be a king, be surrounded by wealth and luxury and all the many things which tempt man, live with the most beautiful of women and be the father of many children, live the life of a perfect grihastha and yet live like a sannyasi. This was the lesson taught to the world of men by Rishabha. It is the peculiarity of human beings that they try to emulate whatever a man in his high position does. And so, it is the responsibility of a good king to set an example to his subjects and make them walk in the path traced out by himself. This was the purpose of this avatara. Rishabha taught men that living a family life, the life of a grihastha, man could still so arrange his life that he could achieve dharma, artha, fame, children, happiness, and salvation in the end by righteous living and selfless performance of all actions. Though he was himself beyond worldly things, Rishabha lived according to the rules set down by the Brahmins and ruled the kingdom like an ideal king. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Chapter 59 of Srimad Bhagavatam, the teachings of Rishabha. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. To propagate the lesson of living a life of detachment to the world, the king Rishabha once called his sons to his side and taught them the rules of living. He said, "My sons, this human body has been given to us not to enjoy worldly things like animals do, but for a higher purpose. Purity of mind is essential. There are two immense gateways. Serving people who are great is one gateway to salvation. The other is the one which leads to worldliness, and this is entered by attachment to the senses and the objects of the senses. Equanimity of the mind is the one thing you should strive for. You should learn to receive gain and loss with the same calm frame of mind. Anger should be conquered and the mind should be brought under control. Devotion to the Lord should be the sole aim of life. You should not become attached to wife and children, wealth and kingdom. Man should desire only that much which is essential for the maintenance of the body. Because of some wrong actions performed in the previous janma, this body has been given to you to live in. You have been made to be born in this world, beset with many temptations. It is but logical that you should act in such a way that there will be no repetition of this cycle of births and deaths. So long as the body exists, so long as the mind does not think on the higher truth, so long will karma also hold its sway over man. Avidya, that is ignorance of the true nature of the Atman, leads man to become involved in the snare called karma. So long as man does not think on the Lord, his life will not find freedom. Man becomes more and more attached to women and a home and a child and 1,000 other things similar to these. Man fails to see that the world of objects is false, and he does not think of the higher wisdom which tells him the truth about the world he lives in. He becomes foolish and suffers as a consequence of his attachments. I and mine, the two dread enemies of man, cloud his vision, and the knots of his heart do not get loosened. Because of his love for women, he forms new attachments: home, land, son, relations, wealth, and so it goes on endlessly. The chain binding him to the earth has new links forged and it becomes stronger and stronger. For such a man, the hopes of salvation are indeed thin. The moment he begins to see the truth about these things, the moment the knot in his heart becomes loosened by wisdom, he loses the attachment he had towards women. His ahankara and mamakara leave him on their own accord. My sons, set your mind on thoughts of the Lord. Abandon attachment. Heat and cold, hunger and thirst, sorrow and delusion should have no effect on you. Your pursuit should be the pursuit of the only knowledge worthwhile, the knowledge of the Brahman. Surrender yourself to the Lord. Dedicate your actions to Him. Listen to stories about Him and keep the company of the devotees of the Lord. Hate no one because everyone is an image of the Lord. Share the pain of others. Control anger. Be alone with yourself whenever you can, because solitude helps you to think of the Lord. Do your duties properly. Do not neglect any of them. Speak sparingly and think more. It is essential that a guru should lead the way for a shishya, a disciple, and for a son there is no greater guru than his father. It is the duty of a father to lead his son in the right path, and it is the duty of a king to lead his subjects in the right path. I am your guru, and I am telling you what you should do. When a guru sees his disciples getting involved in karma, it is his duty to teach them the path of freedom. He has passed through this difficult journey called life, and he knows by experience the many pitfalls that beset the path of man. If the guru has not compassion enough towards his followers to warn him about them, what use then is all the learning of the guru? No man will sit unconcerned when a man is drowning. A guru should be a guide, a father, a mother, a well-wisher. Ponder carefully on all that I have told you. Consider this Bharata as your father and obey him. He is a great man. Live in the world in the manner I have indicated. Bhakti is the one cure for the dread disease called moha, delusion. And with the help of bhakti, save yourself from the cycle of births and deaths. Rishabha spoke these words to his sons, who were already very much like him. It was more to guide the men of the world that he gave this discourse. He then crowned Bharata as king. Renouncing his kingdom, his wife and his children, and all that was once his, Rishabha, who had never been deluded by Maya, left the country and went away. He wandered all over the world till the time his freedom came. It is the rule of life that even when a man has no desires left, when nothing in the world moves him, when he is all ready to move away from the world, still life persists until the appointed time comes. When a potter spins the wheel to fashion the pot of clay, it spins long after the pot is removed from it. Even so, because of some chance, some samskara of the previous birth, life will not leave the body even if the Dehi is ready to die. It was so with the king Rishabha. He had become an avadhuta, and after a long wandering, he reached the slopes of the hills of Kutaka, Kurg. While he was there, a forest fire devoured the large forest where he was wandering, and he found release from the bondage called karma, which had never really touched him. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Chapter 60 of Srimad-Bhagavatam, Bharata the Hermit. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bharata, the son of Rishabha, ruled the kingdom well. He was a righteous man and his rule was perfect. So famed was the earth under his rule that in later days she earned the name Bharatavarsha, since the good king Bharata ruled her. In the wake of his ancestors, Bharata followed all the rules of conduct which are prescribed for a king, and the earth was happy under his rule. He was a great devotee of Narayana. In the heart of Bharata was imprinted the form of the Lord. When he felt that he had enjoyed the kingdom and the pleasures it held long enough, Bharata divided the kingdom among his sons, crowned his eldest son as the king, and renouncing everything, he went away to Haridwar, to the ashrama of the sage Pulaha. The ashrama was located in a picturesque spot. It was surrounded by the river Chakra, which is even today full of shaligramas, the stones which are worshipped, since the Lord Narayana is said to pervade them. Bharata stayed alone there, and with flowers and fruits collected by himself, he would worship Narayana every day with a full and overflowing heart, overflowing with bhakti. He had passed beyond the stage where the pleasures and pains of the world affect man, and his heart was filled with peace born of renunciation and detachment. He had reached the very ecstasy of joy which comes of intense devotion to the Lord. His heart would melt like water when he thought of Narayana, and tears of joy would often flow from his eyes. His heart was like a deep lake into which he had immersed himself and his ego and his self. Every day he would wander around clad in the skin of a deer, and with his hair matted and dusty, he would invoke the Lord who is present in the rising sun. I surrender myself to that glorious power which created this world, which pervades this universe and which it has created, which protects its beloved by the power of intelligence, which is the cause of intellect functioning, which is lodged in the sun, thus giving its glory to the sun. Days passed thus for him, who knew no joy other than the thoughts of the Lord. Once, when he was seated on the banks of the Mahanadi, bent on his morning prayers, a piteous scene met his eyes. A deer had come to the banks of the river to drink water. All of a sudden, the roar of a lion was heard. The noise seemed to come from somewhere near. Frightened by the roar, which she knew was very near, the poor deer did not know which way to run. She had not even begun to drink the water for which she was thirsting. In despair, born of extreme terror, she tried to leap across the river. Because of her sudden panic, the little deer, which was unborn till then, fell into the river out of her body. The mother deer, when she reached the opposite bank, lay panting and crawled to a cave where, after a few moments, she died. Bharata, who had been watching the entire incident, was overcome with pity for the poor, unfortunate deer, which had been born just a few moments back, and which was struggling on the surface of the water. He gathered it up in his arms and took it to the hermitage. He fed it with milk, and he fondled it and comforted it as a mother would. Days passed and the deer became older. By then it had become the very life of Bharata. He became greatly attached to this living thing. He, who had renounced his kingdom, his wife and children and everything else, became inordinately fond of this animal. It became with him an obsession. He could not bear to let it out of his sight even for a moment. If it went out to graze, he would become worried and tell himself, "My poor child has no friends, no kinsmen, no mother and no father. He has no one except me. I am his only refuge. He trusts me completely. I cannot fail him since he has implicit faith in me. It is up to me to protect him." He would spend all his time with him. He would wander in the forest along with the deer, and he would carry him on his shoulders when he thought that the young animal was tired. And if he did not come back to him when evening drew near, he would be terribly worried. He would say to himself, "Will I see my beloved deer again? Perhaps a wolf or a wild hog or some other wild animal has eaten him up. The sun is about to set and still my child has not come back. Perhaps a lion has eaten it up. Perhaps a tiger is even now pursuing it." He would walk about in agony and say, "It is dangerous to leave it alone in the forest. I must go in search of it." So saying, he would wander into the forest and, like one demented, call out to the deer in affectionate terms, and when he found it, would bring it home in his arms. This affection for the deer made him forget his other duties. His daily worship of the Lord, his samadhi when he would sit and concentrate on the form of the Lord, were all now things of the past. When he tried to worship, the deer would come in and prod him gently with his horns, and Bharata would offer to the deer all the young blades of grass which he had gathered. When he sat in meditation, the form of the Lord would not come before his mind. The antics of the young deer would come before his eyes, and he would smile indulgently at the thoughts of his pet. In short, everything was now forgotten, and the deer was the only thing that mattered. He would fondle it like a mother, and he would spend hours together talking to it. This was indeed a terrible state of affairs for one who had renounced the world. Days passed by, and death, which is no respecter of persons, finally drew near Bharata with the speed of a storm and entered him like a snake would into the hole where the rat lives. Bharata fixed his dying eyes on the deer, and his last thought was of the deer. Aching for his pet, Bharata gave up his breath. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.